Erie Chapman is a national leader in healthcare and the foremost spokesperson for the loving care movement in America. Erie has had a distinguished career as a trial lawyer, veteran hospital CEO, judge, and regional Emmy Award-winning television producer and host.
As president and CEO of Riverside Hospital at the age of 33, Erie developed one of the first hospital-based health promotion centers in the country. As president and CEO of Ohio's largest hospital, Riverside Methodist, he founded what is now the giant Ohio Health System in Columbus. Over 12 years, Erie led Riverside Methodist to a position as one of America's finest.
Shortly after the turn of the millennium, as president of Nashville's Baptist Hospital System, Erie Chapman founded the Healing Hospital and the concept of radical loving care.
Through his books and films, and through the Journal of Sacred Work, Erie has passionately, sometimes humorously, and always eloquently advanced the message that too many of America's hospitals and charities are failing to live up to their own mission statements, and that the only answer is to reawaken our own humanity by restoring love to the center.
Ladies and gentlemen, the leader of the loving care movement, Erie Chapman.
Thank you very much. I'm so grateful to be with all of you, and the funny thing about this setup we've got here is that really you should all be up on the stage and we should be out in the audience applauding for you, because this celebration that we're holding today is to recognize something not recognized enough. There is such inadequate appreciation for the work that all of you do every day and every night, and that's the reason for the Trust holding this celebration for you. Today what we want to do is, in addition to this celebration, do two other things, which is to get some sense of some of the stories that happen each day and each night, that happen between caregivers and patients, between caregivers and each other, between caregivers and leaders, and perhaps most importantly, the relationships that you have with yourself, with your God. How do you find rest in the midst of doing so much hard work? And when I say hard work, I mean heartbreaking work on so many occasions. So having spent 30 years working in hospitals, from Ohio down to Florida up to Tennessee, 30 years of having the chance not to actually deliver care, but to be with people who are doing that, I want to be a person, a voice to reflect back to you the thanks of people who maybe never thanked you for your work. Because your work often is given in an unconditional way to people who are unable to thank you because they're only this big, or people who are unable to thank you because they've lost a sense of consciousness. They've moved into a state of dementia or Alzheimer's or some other condition, or they were simply unconscious because you work in the recovery room. So today, we give you those thanks, and the second thing we're going to do is to try to offer some description that has been sought around the country for how it is that loving care works. How do we nurture and support and engage and bring into our lives this wonderful light which you all have experienced at some moment, and the hard part about it is that sometimes it's so brief. You engage with a patient or with a friend or with a colleague or with somebody in your family, and for a moment you think, I just felt this wonderful feeling, right? And we believe with this image we've got behind me here, which is represented by something a lot of you have heard me talk about a whole lot. Actually, it was originally announced in this room, the idea of radical loving care in the Healing Hospital. So we illustrate it with these intersecting circles, recognizing the fact that one of the questions in our minds is what exactly is the problem? If everybody's being so loving and wonderful, and if all of this is going so well, why do we even need to talk about any other issues in charities or in American healthcare? And the reason for it is a painful truth that we're all kind of aware of. And I've raised this issue with audiences all over the country. And if you came in to the emergency department and you were holding your side in pain, and I'm talking about any emergency department in just about any hospital in the country, and you walk in groaning and you come up to the desk, next thing that happens is, what does the person on the other side of the desk say? And that is the hard part. What does she say? She says, fill out the form, go have a seat. Right? Now, that is not to blame, criticize, or attack the person on the other side of the desk. Instead, it's to reflect back to all of us that something is still wrong with the American healthcare system, and it's not the curing side. The curing side is actually working very, very well. Cures are being developed at enormous rates and with astonishing speed, right? So what's missing, because I've asked people in the hospitals I've worked in, tell me about the exchange you just had with the person that was groaning and you just handed them the form. Why do you do that? And they say, you know what they say? That's what the supervisor told me to do. She said, get the form filled out. I got the form filled out, right? One time, I tried to do a few other things, and they said, no, just get the form filled out. Another time, I tried to get up and be helpful, and the supervisor came along and said, just get the form filled out. So over time, the system is beating down this whole process of delivering loving care. Here comes another example. It's a recent one. It happened in a hospital in this state. It was told to me by a nurse who became a patient. Right? So again, the question I'm raising here is, what happens when this encounter doesn't work? What happens when love comes, right, and meets need? Then we get this beautiful intersection right here. We get this heart and the golden thread moving through it. This is the sustained golden thread that begins all the way back to the earliest caregivers that tried to help someone else without asking something in return, right? And then we get what I call transactional encounters, which are the fill out the form encounters. So here comes desperate need, right? Here comes desperate need, and here comes a transaction. No real engagement. No recognition that this is a human being. This is a human being.
Okay, baby. Here we go.
Got a groaner out there. Got a groaner out there. In 30 years, I can't tell you how many times I've heard that line. Got a screamer in bed 4. You know. Oh, gee, the frequent flyer. Here he is again. Right? And when they're frequent flyers and groaners and screamers, what are they not? No longer human beings. Right? So our effort here is not to criticize any individuals, it's to raise up the idea that our systems still need fixing, and I'm not just talking about hospitals. And when I say fixing, I've just used the wrong word because it's much deeper than that, isn't it? If someone comes in and you're all working on the staff of organizations, which you are in every case, and I say to you, hey, you know, we got to kick up our patient satisfaction scores. I want everybody out there smiling. I'm the boss, and I'm telling you, you better get out there and smile. I want you looking happy out there, right? And if you don't, so we got this thing here, and the balance question becomes, how do we interpret rules with love? How do we take a rule and say, I know it's the rule, but perhaps this time we need to inform every rule with love. As Jason Dinger taught me, who's in the audience out here, it's guiding principles that we want to think about. Guiding principles, not rules. Rules are for robots, right? Robots are very good at following rules, generally. But guiding principles are for human beings. So here comes a nurse to an emergency department. She's now become a patient. She's out in her car. Her husband's with her. She has been bitten by a tick, which she doesn't know yet, and she has something many of you may not be familiar with, severe tick disease. Severe. 11 migraine headaches on a scale of 1 to 10. Retching, throwing up, having spasms, just in awful shape. Her husband runs into the ER and says, my wife is a nurse, she thinks she's dying out there. Can you please bring a wheelchair? Nurse immediately grabs a wheelchair and starts toward the door. Halt, another caregiver says. You can't take wheelchairs outside the ER. And he says, she's right there. Can't take wheelchairs outside the ER. Thank God, the original nurse says, can't take them out? Oh, really? Watch me. And she wheels the wheelchair. we have to applaud and support caregivers that have the courage to push against the system, to say, wait a minute, I know that's the rule, but there's a suffering human being out there, and I'm taking the wheelchair out there no matter what you say. Why should the system have to depend on the feistiness of a nurse, right? Now, there are times, of course, when it's obviously good to follow the rules, but we are human beings trying to engage, and at the beginning of this, I wanted to say that all of this is about one thing. It's a celebration of loving care. It's a celebration of every single one of you for the beautiful work that you do, for your great commitment, and for something else we're going to be asking more of you of, which is your ability to support your fellow caregivers who get tired, who get exhausted, who get frustrated, who get angry, and who don't need our criticism, they need our love and support, right? So this is exactly the moment when I do a thing which I do in pretty much every presentation I give around the country, from California to Boston, and it's an effort to illustrate something that's kind of strange about the culture of groups, right? Some of you know what's coming already. The culture of groups. You're all observing what every teacher really appreciates: sitting quietly, paying attention, you know, and looking interested, which I'm grateful for. This is a skill we learned in the first grade: how to look like we're paying attention, whether or not we actually are. Because I can see your interest, but I can't tell if you're really here, right? And a lot of what we talk about is presence. And the other thing that we talk about, and want to encourage you to appreciate and recognize as leaders, is your ability to affect the energy not only of the group, the team that you work with, or the organization you work with, but of the person right next to you, the person you see in the hallway. Yesterday, Andrea Moran, who you're going to hear sing in just a little bit, said she'd seen a study, which is absolutely fascinating to me. She said, when you encounter somebody and they respond with coldness to you, it actually awakens the same center in your brain where pain lives. You actually feel pain. And what happens here is some kind of resonance, some kind of interaction between me and you and to the person next to you in the chair. See what happens when, on the count of 3, I ask you to turn to the person next to you and say, "You are looking good." Wait for the count. Wait for the count. Okay, everybody ready? 1, 2, 3. Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you. We have some veterans from Baptist Hospital over here that are into this, know how to do it. However, a few of you who haven't done this before got a little intimidated, a little introverted, and you didn't get into it. And I can tell you the person next to you doesn't feel better when you say, "You're looking good." So I'm going to give you another opportunity to actually help the individual next to you feel better. Count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Okay. All right. And we got some whole new relationships forming. I think in the back, a couple just got engaged back here. They just met an hour ago, too, which is... So you see what happens with energy, right? You walk down the hallway, and someone says, "Hey, you're looking good." And oddly enough, you actually feel a little bit better. And the way you know that is if they say to you, which has often happened to me, "Hey, you're not looking so good." Now, no matter how you were feeling beforehand, you're suddenly, what happens, right? Shook, like that. So this is the thing about teams. We need to call upon you, invite you to support the energy of your team with supportive language and supportive energy. You know, there's a tradition that we also refer to, which is a very beautiful tradition from another faith background. I think it's both Hindu and Buddhist, and it actually can teach us, who don't happen to have grown up in those faiths, a great deal, and it's this greeting right here. Yeah? You know, you've seen this greeting before. You see people from other countries perhaps go like this, and what that means is, I greet the holy within you, I greet the spirit within you, a lot of different interpretations, right? But what's significant, whether I have the exact interpretation right or not, is I don't care whether you're looking good or not. I'm greeting your spirit. Because with all the effort in America we make to look as good as we possibly can, the point is that sometimes we're not going to be looking good, and we don't want people to say, since you're not looking good, I don't care about you anymore, right? So beyond the laughter is whatever approach you take is the recognition that this greeting to each other as sparks of the divine is a beautiful way to engage with our fellow human beings. If I'm engaging with you like that, I don't care if you're a frequent flyer, a screamer, a groaner, a gallbladder, I recognize you as a fellow human being in need of care. So I want to open my heart with loving care for you and recognize that with all this machinery around the hospital or in the clinic or wherever we are, I'm here to care for you with all my heart, with all my soul, and with all of my mind as well, skill as well as love. It's hard to remember what we hear and easier to remember things that we can see. The first one is a really strange one that my wife has done a wonderful job recreating for our 30-year-old kids in their 30s who are coming home for a family gathering. And so she brought out some of our daughter's old toys, including this one right here, which some of you may recognize. My golly, it's the old, what is this, egg beater? Yeah. So my daughter, 30 years ago, played with this. And of course, for people like me that are sort of strange, everything has significance. So as soon as I saw this, I remembered her standing at this little low sink, doing it, and looking up and saying, see what I'm doing? Yeah. And what is she doing back then? What are your children doing? They're training to become adults. This is kind of an early training to become an adult. Right? So the thing that caused me to wonder about is, how are we doing at training to become kids again? Because we actually need to end up balancing our adult with our child. People around my office will tell you I have no trouble with that. And if I asked you your age, your actual chronological age, you would tell me one thing. But if I asked you, what is your energy age? Most people would say younger than their chronological age, which is great news for those of us, that are losing our hair and getting older. Our energy age is usually younger, isn't it, right? So if I ask you right now, think of your age, your actual now think of your energy age. I know it moves. Sometimes I feel like 12, sometimes I feel like 95, right? I feel so much like 95 that I made the mistake of making that joke to somebody, kind of like this. A charity is making a presentation to the trust. At the end of the presentation, one of the young women in the group, who's about 23, said, by the way, we have a 5K run, love to have you participate. She's looking at the rest of the group, not at me. And I said, great, I'm a runner. I run a couple miles a day. And she looked back at me with a sort of, no kidding. And I said, yes, I even do 5Ks on the weekend. She said, no kidding. Yeah. I said, yes, the only thing is that you would have to, for me to participate, you'd have to establish a category for men over 90. And I waited for her, like I'm waiting for you. I waited for her to laugh. And of course, she didn't laugh. She said, a category. We don't have that now, but we could add a category for you. The way in which teams support each other causes success or failure. That's the center of it. It's all about the culture of the group. And this is true because if you walk into a negative culture, new employee, right? New employee comes in the door, hi, I'm new here. Tell me, I'm just really happy, it's my first day. Oh. You want to bring it down a little bit? I mean, I don't know what you think this is, but, first of all, where you're working, wherever. Oh, gee, you got her. Oh, you got the worst supervisor. Oh, my God. Well, now, what's happening, right? However well you're looking, you're feeling awful. I hired into this organization. I walk into my team, and everyone says, yeah, hi, So you see how important it is? You see how important it is. And the part that we underestimate is your ability to impact that. So these relationships that I want you to hold dear from this point forward are what? Caregiver to patient. The charity system in America is built on this model. These people, including me from my years as an executive, as a great nurse that used to work here, said to me one day, I said, how you feeling about things? She said, the hospital starts in the emergency room and on the second floor. Whatever you guys are doing down in the executive area, we don't really care that much. And that's really, when you got a good culture, actually, that's it doesn't matter that much. The real work is happening outside this room right here. So caregiver to patient, right? Caregiver to caregiver. And this is the second important relationship, caregiver to caregiver. And what are we looking for in the middle of this? It's this heart, it's the golden thread, the tradition of loving care, right? It's the chance you've got to bring love to every encounter, especially the encounters where you're uncomfortable. Especially when you see somebody and think, oh, not her again. And you still approach the encounter with support and love and kindness. When someone comes to the Siloam Clinic for an interview, one of the images put before them, because it's a faith-based clinic, is, we want you to see the face of Christ in every patient that comes to the door and in each other. Now, this is a nice counterpart to this, isn't it? Right? So whether you're in a faith-based organization or not, doesn't matter. The idea, it doesn't matter for the context of this discussion. What we're appealing to you here, inviting you to, I should say, is to find ways to help your staff look past the rude, angry person pounding the desk to see something deeper within, to recognize, as my friend Diana Gallagher says, that when people are acting like this, you have to remember they're more than that. They're more than this angry face, aren't they? We want people, when we're angry, to think that. We get angry? Well, wait a minute, maybe you don't. I get angry, and when I do, it means usually I'm trying to control something, or I'm afraid, and what I'm hoping is, I hope you'll notice I'm afraid, even though I'm acting angry. And that's not usually what we get back. What we usually get back is, you're angry, I'm angry. You're angry, I'm resentful. Loving care calls us to reach across this divide to engage, right? Next relationship is leader to caregiver. And this is the appeal we offer to every leader in this room to remember something I learned about 30 years ago and then periodically forget and then remember again, which is the number one job of a leader in a caregiving organization is not to take care of patients, which they don't usually do. It's to take care of the people who take care of people. That is the number one job. Take care of the people who take care of people. I know there's paperwork in your office. I know there's other stuff you got to do. But the main thing is if you take good care of your staff, if you really take good care of your staff, you've modeled the kind of caregiving that you want to see them give. Last relationship is the one I mentioned earlier. It's caregiver to self. Some people would call this caregiver to God. It's caregiver to self. What's happening inside you right now? How is your relationship with yourself and any higher power? And the difficulty of our getting in touch with ourselves is reinforced by the number of lists that are running through our heads all the time. If I asked you all to close your eyes for 5 minutes right now and rest and meditate and reflect, as I've done this with many groups, a lot of people have so much trouble doing that because the moment they close their eyes, the list runs. Grocery list, shopping list, I said grocery and shopping, what other list? Did I do this, did I do that, did I do this, have I picked up the kids? And it runs so fast, they open their eyes again and they're actually feeling more exhausted than they were before they closed their eyes. So let me just ask a question of all of you here. How many of you actually take at least 5 minutes once a day to close your eyes and rest? Hands up, please, if you do. Pretty good, pretty good. Anybody here take as long as 20 minutes, at least once a day? Anybody? Oh, good, wonderful, wonderful. Right? Now, anyone who does this would say, I feel better after the rest. I feel more refreshed if you're doing it regularly. Because if you're doing it regularly, the issue of the list starts to fall away. And you begin to rediscover yourself, right? So this chance of taking rests periodically and of having the opportunity to close your eyes so that you can engage some other part of yourself that you may not have known for a while. Some part that recognizes yourself as a divine gift, as something beyond whatever you may be showing out here each day. My sister-in-law, Karen Updike, has written a lovely poem that describes this search, this work we try to do to gain authenticity. It's a short poem. I know that when I say poem, a lot of people are going, oh no, please not poem, please not poem. But I hope all of you will cultivate your appreciation of the arts. And the reason we need you to cultivate your appreciation of the arts is why? Art appreciation helps your presence to patients and to each other. Right? So here's Karin's poem. It's called On Disappearing Cloaks. On Disappearing Cloaks. If growing old means showing more and more of our essential selves, let me hasten the process. Let me find the ripcord and the courage to use it. Let me unravel all ruse, all hypocrisy by which we keep others from knowing us and us from knowing ourselves. Let the nap be worn away. Let the patterns emerge, etched and luminescent, like flowers in a prized Persian carpet. Let the cloak become not shabby, but transparent. Let our spirits glow. Let everyone know that what they see is what, in fact, we are. What hard work that is. From the days when you played with one of these or some other toy and were close to being your true self, to whatever range of masks you feel you have to put on. How many of those do you suppose we've got? I mean, we've got dozens of these. What's the mask I put on for a meeting? What's the mask I put on for a cocktail party? What's the mask I put on for different kinds of meetings? What's the mask I put on when my boss comes in the door? You know, all the different masks. And so what we hope is that we can come as close as possible to finding the courage to being true to ourselves. I've got another little demonstration there, and then I want to talk about some of the special people who are what I refer to as great healers. This demonstration, and I think it'll work here with this microphone. This is a tuning fork, and for those of you that don't know what a tuning fork is used to tune a piano, and it makes a very interesting and true sound. If you take a tuning fork and just hit it like that, you can hear the sound of metal on wood, right? This is actually not the true sound of the tuning fork. The true sound is the note that this tuning fork creates that goes like this. Do you hear it? That's the true sound. And within each one of you is your truest sound, your most soulful presence. And between that and out here are these layers that are sometimes helpful to adapt and sometimes toxic. So I hope you'll remember this image as you think about the different ways in which you put on or take off masks for different groups and see if it helps you to find courage. I'd like to tell you a story about a great healer. The healing tradition represented by the golden thread here, this healing tradition, golden thread goes back at least to Moses, if not before, through King David, on through, of course, the arrival of Christ into this world, who offers his message of love across 2,000 years to us, offers parables like the Good Samaritan, in which a lot of our radical loving care work is grounded. And what else? Other people of other faiths would say that is what's true of the person that they worship or the deity that they worship, that somehow that individual opens the presence and the sense of a higher power to them. So as we think about great caregivers, we can feel like there's a lot of distance between great figures that I just mentioned, Muhammad, King David, Jesus, Buddha, right? And then you come to the next level, which is Mother Teresa, Gandhi, Martin Luther King. Yeah? Say, okay, getting a little closer, but I'm still feeling like I'm way away from that. And then you come to a nurse named Deidre Hall, who I met here at this hospital years ago. And I noticed her as I was making rounds here at Baptist because she seemed to have a particular energy about her. And I, in my strange way of wondering about these things, I wondered where she was getting all this energy and how long she'd been doing this. And she said, well, at the time I asked her the question, I think she'd been doing it 26 years. It's about 30 or so, 31 maybe. What is it that Deidre does? I was with a patient in the neurointensive care unit about 4 or 5 months ago here at Baptist Hospital. And I said to you, how is your care going? And he and his wife simultaneously said, we have got this astonishing nurse. Every time she comes in the room, listen carefully, every time she comes in the room, I feel actually a little bit better. Every time she walks in, I feel better. Deidre, huh? They said, yeah, that's her name, Deidre Hall. That's her name, it's Deidre Hall. It's Deidre Hall. Deidre Hall, right there, stand up. How many years, am I off in the years? 30? 30, exactly 30. Yeah, good. Thank you, Deidre. And again, thank you on behalf of all those patients in the neurointensive care unit that haven't been able to thank you. We express on their behalf gratitude, thanks, and appreciation.